Welcome, guys, back to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine. Today we are welcome with Evan Golden. How we doing, man?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course. What you got over the shoulder?
Well, I don't want to make a big deal about it, but we've got the HWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. I figured I'd bring it on to the show and bring some bling on here.
I love it. Anytime you guys come on here with championship gold, it's kind of validating because you guys are doing your thing. It's cool to see you guys achieving goals and knocking things off the list. So I'm glad you got the strap over the shoulder.
Yeah, I figured I'd bring it on to the show and show it off here once in a while. I'm pretty proud about it, so I said, I'm going to bring it on to the show, and so yeah, I'm glad it's welcome on the podcast for sure because I'm proud to have it. So.
But before we dive into your wrestling journey, your fandom, your career so far, would you like to shout out your social medias and maybe even like your upcoming events just to let the fans know where they can check you out?
Yeah, I would love to. Well, first of all, speaking of the championship this Saturday, I'm actually going to be defending it, and we're going to be in Rutherford, North Carolina for HWA Wrestling. You guys can check that out on Facebook and Instagram. That they're a great promotion that I like to wrestle for, and I'll be there this Saturday, so you guys can check that out. HWA Wrestling, it's a Heritage Wrestling Alliance, and then you guys can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Evan Golden. I'm all over the place. That Instagram is really where I spend a lot of my time because I like photography and pictures and stuff. So I'll post on there more than often. And then well, I'm on TikTok too. I just recently jumped on the TikTok train. I'm a spot monkey, so I got to show everybody what I'm doing in the ring, all my high spots and whatnot.
Okay. Seeing as how this is the I Love Wrestling podcast, I try to start like at the beginning of our wrestling fandom because at the heart to do this, you got to be a fan.
Yeah.
So when did you find professional wrestling, and what about it kind of made you fall in love with it?
Well, in kind of a strange way, I'd like to say I guess the best way I can describe this is professional wrestling kind of found me when I was born because I was born into a wrestling family. So I guess the best way I could put this is I started seeing wrestling before I even knew what it was and whether I wanted to or not. One of my earliest memories, I guess, is seeing my dad wrestling and then but like I said, for a while I didn't even really know what was going on. I was just kind of like,
Mhm.
oh, that's my dad, and he's doing something up there, and I don't know what it is. And now he's up there, and I finally got to kind of catch on to what was going on and realizing that oh, he's a professional wrestler. And then as I grew older, I started to realize, well, I think I want to throw my hat in the ring. And yeah, so I kind of have one of those weird, unique wrestling stories where I've kind of been around it my whole life. And with that being said, though, I mean, my dad's definitely my favorite wrestler just because he's my dad. But I also love wrestlers like Ric Flair, old school wrestlers like that. But then I also really enjoy new school wrestlers. Kenny Omega was a major influence on my style, and a lot of what you see me do in the ring today, I always have him in mind. And so yeah, it's cool because I have influences, but the biggest influence for me is definitely my family.
Of course. You brought up your dad. Is that Eddie Golden?
Yes, it is. Yeah, he wrestled for about 30 years on the NWA territories, and he's definitely my hero. And the first wrestler I ever saw wrestle, I'll tell you that much.
Other than him, who would you say are your favorites or were your favorites growing up?
I think growing up, well, see, it's funny because like right now, I'd say Kenny Omega is my favorite, but he always had me watching stuff growing up that I didn't even realize was old school. He always showed me matches like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, a lot of old school wrestling like that, which I really enjoyed. Tully Blanchard. So I kind of grew up and got my schooling from studying all these old school wrestlers, but I was kind of taught that that's how it was supposed to be. So like I was like 8 or 9 years old watching all these old school wrestlers, not knowing that there's actually a new school to even really be watching. And that's when I started watching newer products like TNA. I love TNA wrestling, and I basically started watching that when it was at its prime time live on TV. So you could also say that wrestlers like AJ Styles and Jeff Jarrett and that like old TNA prime time era was a huge influence on me as well. So yeah.
Growing up, did your dad try to keep you away from the idea of becoming a wrestler, or was he a believer in you to go do that goal, maybe?
Well, the good news is he never really tried to push me otherwise to be a wrestler or to not be a wrestler. I got kind of lucky in that he was never pressuring me to, but he probably would have liked me to, but at the same time he wasn't gonna be upset if I didn't. Matter of fact, there were some days, he would kind of hint at me that it might be a good idea not to for the sake of my body and
Hmm.
not beating myself up. And then there were some days he'd be like, "Oh well, it would be good if you tried it." And so I got really lucky because he never really pressured me otherwise. He would have been fine if I didn't. But now that I've got going, though, I'm happy to say that he's been a part of the journey and following me and what I've been up to. And that's really special too. So, but fortunately, he wasn't like, "Yeah, yeah, you need to go wrestle."
Were you able, like, as a kid, to go to the shows and maybe see what things were like in the locker rooms or behind the curtain?
Yeah, I did. That's one of the strangest parts of the whole thing is that, I was probably a toddler back in the dressing room, and yeah, just some people might not know this, but the dressing room of a wrestling show is one of the strangest places you could be, especially on the indies, and I just saw a lot of stuff I didn't know what was going on, but I eventually realized that I was just on the road, and it was cool because all of my dad's old buddies were around that I still know today. So it was a pretty awesome experience to be back there. But it was also strange in certain ways because I was like, who are these people, anyways?
What made you decide to start training?
Well, I was around 18 or 19 when I really wanted to give it a try. There was a point where I really thought I might not ever get a chance to because wrestling was kind of down at the time. There wasn't really a lot going on. And then around a few years ago, when I was 18, 19 years old, I really started watching a lot of New Japan wrestling. I started getting back into what WWE was doing. And watching that all really made me say, uh, I'm inspired, because for a while I wasn't even barely interested on what was actually happening on TV. But around 19 years old is when I was like, yeah, I really want to start training. And, fortunately, I saw a lot of wrestling at the time that inspired me to get going.
How did you go about finding a training school? Did you go through your dad, or did you go seeking it yourself?
I went through my dad, but my dad actually brought me to one of his best friends growing up, Easy Money. A lot of people might remember Easy Money from ECW, WCW. I think he was also on TNA for a while. And my dad brought me to him because they're good friends growing up and wrestled each other for a very long time. And he basically said, "Son, if you want to be the best wrestler, you got to work with him because." For those who know a lot about him, he's very innovative and just one of the greatest wrestlers ever. A lot of what you see today on TV, he came up with. So my dad was like, "Look, if you want to be a well-rounded wrestler, you'll want to go to him." And that's what I did, and he taught me everything I know. And he didn't. Yeah, it's not a wrestling school, but I got to work one-on-one with him, and basically everything that I do today is thanks to him and my dad too. My dad on the other side of the coin really taught me a lot about psychology and pacing and stuff where I learned a lot of wrestling from Easy Money. So that's the both of them really teamed up and taught me everything I know. So
Like sometimes you hear like stories of guys getting in the ring and it comes naturally to them, and then other times it's complicated. It's hard to figure out how to do the nuances of wrestling. So, like, what did the training process look like for you? Is it something that came to you? I don't want to say easy, but it came to you, you know, easier than others, or was it something that you really had to work at?
Well, I definitely think for some reason things came to me easier, but the one thing that didn't uh, feel so easy for me was learning how to bump. You know, I took my first bump and hated it. I was like, this is the worst thing ever. I could never do this for the rest of my life. And I took another bump and was like, man, this is horrible. I've got a headache. And then I took my third one, and then next thing I know, all I can do is bump. I feel like I bump all the time, and probably bump more than I should. But you know, that was the one thing that really threw me off. Is I was like, you know, bumping feels horrible, but now it's like second nature to me to beat myself up. But yeah, the training process for me, I enjoyed it, and a lot of it kind of came easy to me because I'd been around it my whole life. But the that part definitely shocked me at first because I was like, man, this is horrible. But now I love it, and it's, you know, what I do. But that was the one thing that I was like, man, I don't know. It was the one time I was a little nervous. I was like, I don't know if I can do this because anybody who's ever taken a bump knows that it sucks, and they don't want to admit it. But the first one's always rough, you know.
So, like, were you, how long was it before you like had your first match? Like, did you train for a year, 2 years, 6 months? Like, what did
Oh,
that look like?
it was a few months. I actually probably had my first match way sooner than I should have. It went well, but I remember thinking I still have a trillion things to learn. But fortunately, I was in good hands, you know, and you know, had the basic structure of what needed to happen down. I definitely was, you know, didn't have myself figured out yet, but I feel like that first match in a way was almost part of my training process. You know, it was like I trained for a few months and got myself at an okay point, but then I got to go in front of a crowd and have that match. And like I said, funny enough, it went well, but I probably could have waited a few more months before wrestling. But you know, everything happens for a reason. I obviously have no regrets, but yeah, I probably should have waited. But it was fine. It was okay. I wouldn't study it or watch it. It's just, you know, it happened.
Gotcha. What was there any advice or like pointers that Easy Money was able to give you during training and your early formative years that's helped you maybe throughout your career so far?
Yeah, you know, he really has taught me a lot about the devils in the details. You know, when I first started training and we would train to do sequences and stuff, and you know, I'd be real fast and you know, way too sloppy, and he would be like, you know, on, you know, slow down, and you want everything to look crisp. You know, you want it to look smooth as silk. And so he really helped slow me down and get things to look less choppy. And you know, when I had my first match, though, it still was pretty choppy, but you know, now things are smoothing out a little bit, and it's cool though because at the time I didn't really know exactly what he was talking about. I was like, silky. I don't even really know what that means. But then the more you train, the more he was, you know, able to teach me what he was talking about. You know, you want everything to look like it makes sense and that it's not rushed. And that's one thing that he always kind of got into my brain. But he also taught me that you don't want things to be too slow either, you know.
Hmm.
So it's all about timing and stuff like that. And he's always really helped me with that. So
When did you find the School of Morton?
School of Morton, they reached out to me and wanted me to come in and do a show for them. Uh, and that was a couple of years ago. And next thing I know, I think I've done 100 shows for them. I jumped right on board with their show. Um, I've actually been there for a long time because when I first went there, they were running as SOM 505 Live, and I stayed all the way to now, to where now they do shows SOM Revolution, SOM Legacy. They have all these different programs, and I've been kind of there since the beginning of their their run there where they got real hot. I mean, SOM's been around for a while, but the past couple of years they've been on a hot streak, and fortunately, I've kind of been there the whole time. I've not barely missed a date now that I think about it.
How important would you say like the School of Morton has been to your career so far?
It's been great. It's been one of the biggest parts of my entire career as a whole right now. Matter of fact, it's where I've met all of my best buddies in the business. Every close friend that I have, and that's pretty important to me because life's too short not to make any friends, man. And I've made a few there that I would trust with my wallet. So you know what? I like SOM and I appreciate them introducing those certain people to me and. They've also given me some of the best matches I've had too, so that's also important. So
And is that ran by Ricky?
it used to be ran by Ricky. Now they're having a shift in management.
Okay.
So there's been a couple of changes of personnel there. So, but when I first went there, Ricky was in charge, and that was good too because I got to be around him, and that's one of the biggest privileges a wrestler can have is to learn from Ricky or at least be around him because he's one of the best in the business and obviously a living legend. So. Um, and Ricky and his family, they've been family friends my whole life, but that doesn't mean that, you know, I've known Ricky since I was a kid, but I just recently have been able to learn stuff from him, and that really opened my eyes and have taught me a lot. So that's always pretty cool too. So
What are some of like the lessons that you've been able to learn from Ricky?
Ricky's taught me. He's another one that really wanted me to slow down. He said, "Yeah, hold on, and slow down. You're going too fast." And he's also, someone who's taught me a lot about pacing, and that's important because, I'll look back at old matches of mine. I'm like, oh, I was moving way too quick there, and people like Ricky are great to help you pace things and make things look silkier, and but yeah, I've had a lot of good one-on-one moments in the ring with Ricky for he's taken time out of his day to teach me how to make things make sense. And he always says, he can't teach you how to work, but you got to teach yourself how to do that, but he can help you with little things. And at the end of the day, that's where everything's important is the little things in the business. So
Did you like grow up around Kerry Morton then?
I did. Carrie Morton and I have known each other both since we were toddlers, and that's kind of weird to think about because when we had our first match together a couple of years ago, that was like a really surreal moment because we'd been around each other all our whole lives and have always hung out together. I guess since I'd say we started hanging out since we were 5 years old, and the next thing we know, we're having a match and that was pretty cool because it was one of those full circle moments in my life where I was like, oh, okay, now we've had all these fake matches our whole lives where we're playing around and rolling around in the ring after shows, and the next thing you know, we're having a match for the NWA World's Junior Heavyweight Championship, no less. I can't think of anything more full circle than that.
How important was that match in that scenario for you, whether it's personally or even professionally?
Oh, that was a really cool day because it was a big deal to me personally and professionally. Because professionally speaking, that's a very prestigious championship that I had a shot at. And then personally, it was just kind of funny because him and I have always had this scenario where we're trying to wrestle each other. As kids, we'd always roll around in the hay, and then next thing I know, this is real. It's really happening. And it was one of those things where when the bell rang, it kind of gave me the shivers. I was like, "Whoa, this is really happening." And we've had a couple matches with each other, but that's the only singles match we had, and so far, of course. And that was just an awesome day because I think the energy in the room was there because I think a lot of people know, at least a lot of people at that show knew too that him and I have been around each other our whole lives. So it was kind of a weird but awesome day, and personally and professionally.
You know, I have always wondered like as a podcaster, like I try to seek like you guys' favorite moments
Yeah.
matches. So like who's been like that guy you've got in the ring with that maybe you wasn't expecting you'd ever get in the ring with, and you had that like kind of surprising, surreal moment?
Well, I had a amazing surreal moment with Heath Slater. I had a match with him a few months ago. I would have never expected to even be wrestling him. I That was kind
Hmm.
of out of the blue. I didn't expect to have a match with him, but I guess when I did, it went really well. You know, him and I like hit it off in the ring chemistry wise almost immediately. And we were out there for like 30 minutes, but it felt like 5 minutes. And that's always a good sign too. You know, if you're out there with someone and it feels like you've only been out there a couple of minutes and you're going on an hour, that means you guys like wrestling each other. So him and I really hit it off in the ring, and I felt had a fine match that people still talk to me about, and I'm glad that happened because I guess to answer your question, I didn't expect that. You know, I thought maybe we'd go out there and wrestle a little bit, and we went out and tore the house down, and I'm happy to say it's true. You know.
Absolutely. How did you start your working, I guess, relationship with the NWA?
Well, I got a great start with the NWA territory system. Joe Kazana gave me my start with his promotion at NWA JCP. Which is a great entryway to do anything to do with NWA. So Joe Kazana had faith in me, and you know, put me in his ring. And then Tommy Henry, who runs NWA Crossfire, now I'm doing shows for him, which is great news because all of these are just great shows. Anybody who loves NWA wrestling and loves that old school feel of wrestling, they need to watch these because they're so fun. And there's also just a lot of hidden gems in there, too. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but the NWA and their territory system brings in so many wrestlers. Like they had Rhino a few weeks ago. They had Natty Neidhart. You know, they bring in people here and then that you wouldn't quite expect. Alex Hammerstone was on NWA 77 last night. I mean, it's just, I think people need to start watching it to realize, like, whoa, these shows bring in a lot of surprise people, and I've had a great time, doing the territory system. And matter of fact, last year they had a really good show where they brought all the territories together for one big show, and that was so cool. And to be able to be a part of that was awesome. And it's another place where I've made a lot of good buddies. You know, Michael Gabriel, a lot of people should look into him. The NWA are basically responsible for him and I tag teaming together. And, it's always good to have a tag team partner that you actually enjoy tagging with. And that's how I feel about him. So I love the relationship I've had with them, and anytime they have me back, I love it, and I can't recommend people to watch it enough.
You bring up Michael Gabriel. It's funny because it's my next question, but you said the NWA kind of put you guys together. Like, tell
Yeah.
us the story about how they put yourself and Michael Gabriel together to be the guiding light.
Well, this is actually kind of a funny story. Me and Michael Gabriel had a sort of a tryout match together. I was wrestling him, and him and I were already friends. You know, we sort of knew each other, but not that well. Like we knew of
Mhm.
each other really well, but we never really chopped it up or talked on the phone together. It was nothing serious. And the next thing I know, we're doing this tryout match together where it was evaluated by well, a lot of important people. Dr. Tom Pritchard was there evaluating it. Trevor Murdoch was there. There was a lot of people there watching it, and Billy Corgan was there. And after the match we wrestled for like 5 or 6 minutes or whatever. And Billy Corgan was like, "Hey guys, I love the match. You guys would actually be a really good team." And it's funny because at the time I was thinking that's a horrible idea because him and I are like complete opposites of each other. We don't really look alike. We don't have the same look. He's kind of one of those creepy cult wrestlers, and that's just not anything like me, right? So when Billy Corgan said that, I was just kind of like, well, I don't know if that's even something I'd be interested in doing, but I'm not going to say no because, that would be ridiculous. So but next thing I know, we started tagging together and everything started going really well. And matter of fact, him and I still team on other shows. And like I said, I love teaming with them, and I always find it funny because I'll never forget when we got put together. I remember thinking, I don't think it's gonna go that well, but I was wrong because I love teaming with him, and him and I have had a lot of success together. Matter of fact, we've even won tag titles in West Virginia, which is pretty cool.
Okay. What's been your favorite moment together?
My favorite moment was probably I liked when we won those tag titles because that was right when we got put together for the first time, and we'd already kind of found success really fast. Billy
Hmm.
Corgan put us together in December of like 2023, and then
Okay.
literally like 4 or 5 months later, we went together and got those tag straps, and then him and I kind of looked at each other and was like, "Whoa, that's crazy." But my favorite moment is probably the first time we ever teamed together, just because it's kind of cool to look back at that and see how much we've progressed as a tag team. Like it was still a good match, but you could tell both of us still don't really know each other that well. And now, if we team together, we know almost everything there is to know. We know each other like the back of our hands.
I love it. I'm originally from West Virginia, actually.
Oh, really?
I moved out to the Chicago area when I was like 11, 10 or 11. So like I know like growing up, West Virginia independent crowds were probably the craziest, and to this day, maybe the craziest crowds I've ever been a part of.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I get the chance, I like to ask this question: do you have a crazy West Virginia story, whether it's at a show or with fans or anything like that?
Are you kidding? I've got one from 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so me and Michael Gabriel started going out to West Virginia. This is the first time I'd ever wrestled there, and I liked it too because, like you said, it was like just crazy crowds. Like everywhere I've gone around there, and I say crazy in a nice way. Like they get into it. They're loud as
It's
soon as you walk
real. It's
out.
real to them.
Yeah, yeah, and if they don't like you, they'll make it clear that they don't like you. And if they love you, they'll go the extra lengths to let you know they love you. And I guess that's my crazy West Virginia story. I walked out. This is I guess last summer, so about a year ago. I walked out a show in West Virginia, and this old lady got over the guardrail and slapped my shoulder really hard because she didn't like me. But the thing is like I didn't know. Like I've never had someone in the crowd actually try to physically do something like that. So I was, jaw jacking with her and telling her how I feel, and she actually like got over the rail, and it wasn't even like a slap. It was like one of those like slap punches where it kind of hurt a little. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, this show didn't have any security. So, nobody's going to separate anything. But I mean, I guess I got lucky because now that I think about it, she could have gone all the way over the rail and chased me. Who knows? But that was the first time I was like, wow, it's definitely different around here.
So, what happened? Did they just send her out of the building, or did they let her watch the show, or
Yeah, and that's another thing. They let her watch the whole show, and I had to hear her yelling at me the whole match. And I don't know why
that's
she didn't
hilarious.
like me so much. I thought I was, pretty tolerable, but I guess I wasn't. The thing is like I I guess she came to her own senses because
Okay.
after she hit me, she just sat back down and just like crossed her arms all angrily. And I was like, dang, man, someone needs to kick her out. But I'm glad they didn't because, I forget. I don't care. It's fine. I forgave it pretty quickly, but it completely threw me off. I was like, oh my gosh, I just got hit by an old lady. And she was strong too. A lot of old people, you think they'd be weak. No, it hurt pretty bad. I think it bruised my arm.
Maybe she was just having a rough day, needed to take out some frustration, and you was the guy.
I was the guy. I was definitely the guy. And hopefully, she calmed down. But fortunately, I also had a great match, and maybe she enjoyed it and changed her mind. But she definitely didn't like me when I walked out. I'll tell you that much.
We was touching on a little bit earlier and got off topic a little bit, but overall, when you look at your work so far with the NWA, how would you explain that experience?
I would explain it as a very educational experience. The fact that I've been given a chance by Joe Kazana and and Tommy Henry to go out there and hone my craft on a stage like that. That's awesome because there's a lot of people that I think a thing that makes me happy about it is the two territories that I like to wrestle for the most right now are kind of close to each other. Because there are territories all over the country right now. They have NWA Texas, and I know you probably have heard of, maybe even been to NWA Chicago. Um, but Crossfire and JCP are the style that I grew up around my whole life, and
Okay.
for them to give me that chance is so cool, and it's taught me a lot. When I go back and look at when I first started over there, I feel like I've grown as a wrestler, and I feel like but even though when I first started going there, I had a lot to learn, they still gave me that chance, and I think that was really nice of them, and it was an all. It's just it's been cool too because I've met a lot of people that have given me advice. Trevor Murdoch. That night I was telling you about where we got put together. Trevor
Hmm.
Murdoch took time out of his day to give me tremendous advice, and there's a lot of people like that around there right now, like Tom Latimer and people like him that are really giving, Mike Knox, they'll, give you advice because that's what they're there for. And they're also doing a great job. They perform on the shows. Tom Latimer is the world's heavyweight champion right now. So, it's pretty cool to see that there's guys like that around there too to, teach younger people like myself, what's right and what's wrong.
Absolutely. Out of the whole NWA roster, if you could pick anybody to get in the ring with, whether it's singles or in a tag team situation, who would they be?
Oh well, I've got to go with KC Kazana, and that's kind of cheating because I wrestle him a lot, but
Okay.
I always have to pick him because he's one of my best opponents I've ever had, and some of the best matches I've ever had have been with him. He is a tremendous talent, but he's got a bad attitude, and sometimes I have to straighten him out. So that's what I'll always pick him, no matter how many times I've wrestled him, because he's a part of a tag team now that we've wrestled multiple times, the country gentleman for NWA. But anytime I wrestle him one on one, it's just an awesome experience, and we always try to tear it down. Whether even if we're not trying to tear it down, the roof is blown off the place. And I don't know, some people just have that chemistry, and him and I definitely do. And I'll wrestle him any day of the week.
What's it been like for you to take on like the country gentlemen in tag team matches? Because I've seen them work, and they're some of the most impressive. They do some of the most impressive tag team work I've seen, especially in a modern day.
Yeah, they do a lot of great stuff. The one thing they do the most is break my back. Let me tell you, those guys are definitely rough in the ring. Especially AJ Kazana. For those who don't know AJ, you should definitely look into him. He's a great wrestler, but he's a big guy, and I've fallen subject to a lot of his worst beatings here and then. I'm not a small person myself, but I think the thing about AJ is he makes you look small. He'll throw
Hmm.
you around. So it's always good to be in the ring with them, but you're also gonna have to prepare yourself for you know couple of punches to the face.
Absolutely. Recently NWA joined the Roku.
Mm.
How like outside looking in, how do you think that's changed the NWA landscape? Like, do you think that's a like just a complete game changer to elevate that product?
I personally, I think that's what the product needed. For a while, they were running power on the X app, the old Twitter app, and
Hmm.
I mean that's like accessible, but I'm kind of from the day and age where not a lot of people use Twitter anymore. I mean, I have one, but I don't really get on there much, and a lot of my friends don't either. So when I heard that that's where they were airing the show, I was kind of like, oh well, it's free, but that kind of sucks. And I'm happy they're doing this now because everybody has, in some shape or form, either own a Roku or have been on Roku or have family members that have a Roku. So
Hmm.
Roku's kind of like a commonplace that you can still watch it on TV. That's another thing too, Roku's on TV, and I think that it's cool that you can watch what the NWA is doing on your just on your streaming. When you're watching it on Twitter, you kind of have to be on your phone. And then some people would try to cast it from Twitter to their TV and it wouldn't work. Where this, you could just get your Roku remote and turn it on. And so I think it is a game changer for them. And I think that that's important because another good thing about it is they can kind of put a little video library on there now because I'm pretty sure they have their own Roku channel. So
Yep.
they can kind of put anything they want to on there. So I think it's a great game changer and something they've needed to do for a while. In this day and age, if you don't have a TV deal, it's kind of hard to find where to put your stuff. NWA used to put stuff on YouTube, which was good, but I think Roku's better, and I'm glad that that's where it's at now, and that there's a deal there.
Definitely. You brought up the TV aspect, and
Yeah,
that's something I find very interesting. Like I've done some sponsorship work and stuff with NWA Exodus Pro in Cleveland,
yeah,
and going to a territory, I've just noticed that there's the production is so
yeah,
much more towards that TV aspect as opposed to your normal everyday independent event.
yeah.
Is that something you've been able to experience, whether it's with NWA and NWA Power, or even with the territories you've been able to work with, that it's just more
Yeah,
geared towards television?
Yeah, I'm glad that it is because it kind of whipped me into shape. When I first started going up there, I saw the footage of me and Michael Gabriel's. This is a good example. Me and Michael Gabriel teamed together for the first time, and I saw the footage and I loved it because I was like, man, this is very nice production. But it also made me realize, oh my gosh, I need to get in the gym because you know what they say about TV, that adds about 20 pounds to you. Well, they added about 20 pounds to my stomach. So I was like, I'm going to the gym. And so basically that's the one thing I liked about it is it kind of made me realize, this is the real deal and I need to definitely look the part and whip myself in shape. Michael Gabriel did the same thing too. We didn't look bad, but we were just like, you know what, we need to straighten up our act and go to the gym and get into shape. And that's what we did. And a lot of people get kind of shocked about TV and how that can actually do that to you. You think you look great until you're on the camera like that, and you're like, oh man, I've got a lot of work to do. And so that's one thing that I liked about it is it kind of opened my eyes to how different production changes everything. At the time I was used to my girlfriend or a buddy of mine or my dad just like filming the match with their phones and then me watching it later. But when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's that's rough. And then just recently I did extra work on TNA, which was a great opportunity because I got to go out to the Impact tapings and do the security guard deal up there. The only problem with that is that I watched that footage back and was like, hey, I look great, but now I need to put on some more muscle so I look bigger. So, the thing about TV is it really shows you what you want to look like. And
Okay.
that's kind of why places like the territories are good too, because you can figure yourself out, and that's important. So.
How did you get to do extra or security work for TNA?
Well, TNA needed somebody to come out there and whip Steve Macklin into shape, and they reached out to me. No, I'm kidding. I got into contact with TNA, and they needed people to come up and do the security deal, and then for I had a great opportunity to go up there, and so, as a matter of fact, I saw recently you had Mike Santana on the show. I actually got to
Yep.
do some work with him to help him out, and I got to meet a lot of people on their roster that was just an awesome experience. And so it was a great time, and fortunately, TNA is in a really good spot right now. They are probably on the stride of their lives because there was a point where TNA didn't look so good a
Yeah.
few years ago, and they are doing great. They have a working relationship with WWE. They have a great talent roster, and to be up there up close around it was really cool for sure.
Absolutely. And like I'm glad you brought up the Santana interview.
Yeah,
And I just did one with AJ Francis. it's cool
Good.
to be able to do work with TNA as they're growing and hopefully to grow with them. What would you say like are the biggest differences from going to an NWA event and then going to a TNA event? Like, is I'm sure the backstage is completely different and how they build things is completely different. What
Yeah.
have you noticed from being at both?
Well, I think the biggest difference that I can think of is the type of crowd. NWA's crowds, they really like to see old school wrestling.
Hmm.
They really like it when you wrestle, which is what you're supposed to do. But at TNA, the crowd goes crazy for the flips. That's what TNA really got built on, was that X division there, and it's
Yep.
still like that. I'm sure a lot of people seen the ladder matches that have been happening there recently. Like that crowd loves that, and they don't want to see anything much less than that. They like that high pace style. They like ladders. They like the X division, and that's the biggest thing that I could tell is they don't want you to be, doing a rest hold, brother. They want to see some ladders, and that's pretty cool because that's basically what I grew up watching, and I was taught an old school style by my dad, but I love the TNA style too, and to see all that up close was really cool. There's no doubt that I'll, be back to see that again and work with them again because that was really cool, and I'm excited for their future right now.
Absolutely. Um, earlier you brought up your love for Kenny Omega, how much you
Yeah,
appreciate his in-ring work. Um, Once upon a time, he was the belt collector,
yeah.
and you have been the gold collector. What's it been like for you to kind of be able to mirror that and to go earn championship gold from different promotions and kind of, a lot of people see winning championships as a stamp of approval. So to have
Yeah.
these different promotions give you that stamp of approval, what's that been like for you?
Oh man, it's great. I remember there was a time about 7 or 8 years ago. I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, if I ever wrestle, do you think I could ever like win a championship or something? And he's like, Oh yeah, you definitely could. And I was like, in my brain, I was like, I don't think so. But now it's happened multiple times, and that's pretty cool because, like you said, it's a stamp of approval. But the one thing that I like about it is I get to wrestle more. Uh, the way I see it, the more companies that I can have a title for, the more I get to go back there to where I want it. And then I also take a lot of pride in defending championships on other people's shows. Like I just
Nice.
talked to HWA. This title here, I won this at HWA, and I actually just messaged them a few weeks ago. It was like, how would you feel about me defending it on this other show? And they're like, yeah, Evan, that'd be great. So it's kind of like it's advantageous to everybody to defend all these titles everywhere because it helps them get eyes on their company, and it helps me get to wrestle more, which is what I love to do. It's my favorite thing to do is wrestle. So winning these titles are cool, but the best part is to be able to go out there and wrestle even more because of it. And there was a time I would have never dreamed that this would be a reality. But the cool thing about it is, you know, it's kind of full steam ahead when you have a lot of championships like that. And but it's also a lot of responsibility, and I think that's what I like about it the most is I get to go out and just be the best champion I can be and make whatever the company it is I'm champion for proud.
Being somebody that has that responsibility and is holding that championship gold and kind of waving the flag of the company that you have the belt for, when you're backstage, do you ever get like younger guys or guys just coming to you asking for advice or how they should try to present themselves to the owners or promoters and things like that?
Yeah, yeah, that does happen here and then, and that's kind of a funny thing too because that's something I have just recently started to get is that some people will come up and be like, "Hey, Evan, I just noticed that you've been wrestling here and here a lot. What do I need to do?" And that's my favorite thing because I get to help them too. I'm a firm believer in helping anybody and everybody, who needs to, maybe some guidance, and I appreciate them feeling like they can ask me for help because that's what I'm gonna do. I'll help them out because that's what we need to do. We all need to help each other in wrestling and push everybody forward because that's the only way wrestling is going to thrive. And if I was to look at someone and be like, "Oh, I'm not going to help you. Just figure it out," and they don't figure it out, then that's one less person that's going to be wrestling for a company, and that sucks. We want everybody to be able to do what they want to do and be where they want to be. So I appreciate when people ask me that stuff.
Absolutely. What's it been like for you to not only like learn from your dad outside of the ring, but then to be able to get in the ring with him, tag team with him, and things like that?
Oh, it's awesome, man. Me and my dad just won tag titles a few months ago. Well, more a few weeks ago now. Um, and man, it was just the coolest experience because that's probably, you asked me earlier about kind of a surreal experience and my favorite moment. That might be, no, no, that probably definitely is my favorite moment because, we'd never won tag titles together and we'd only tagged together like once or twice. And then when that happened, it kind of opened my eyes. I was like, oh my gosh, me and my dad are tag champions in 2025, and my dad hadn't wrestled in a while too. So that was another thing about that moment that I was like, whoa, this is just unbelievable. But learning from him is, the greatest gift I've ever had in life. But having that moment to kind of like validate it all was awesome. I was like, this is unreal. That was probably the only time in wrestling so far that I've basically kind of been teared up a little bit because I was like, oh my gosh, this is heavy.
Is he one of those guys that pushes you to be better than he was?
Yeah, I think the big thing he wants is I think he wants me to be different. A lot of people when I first started wrestling, I think they just expected to be me to be just like him in every
Hmm.
way. Some people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, Evan, you know, that's not at all how your dad used to do it." And I'd be like, "Oh man, I guess I'm screwing all this up." But then he told me, he's like, "No, son, I don't want you to be a carbon copy of me. He was like, I want you to go out there and be your own person." And that's when I first started to really get the confidence to be myself. And now I think that's the thing he's the most proud of is that I'm kind of, beating at my own drum there and doing what I want to do. And but I mean, that I still do a lot of stuff that he used to do, and we obviously, to anybody who used to know him, we look a lot alike too, so that helps. But it's also kind of cool that like he's understanding that I want to do my own thing too, and if I do something that's new or something innovative, he likes it. He's like, "Oh, that's good. You're not being just like me." And that's probably the best thing about his guidance is he's not wanting me to be just like him. And I'm sure he would absolutely love me to end up being better one day. There's a lot of shoes to fill, but I think that would be cool to happen one day. Um, so we'll see what happens. That would be awesome though.
You as a father son duo, is there any other father son duo that you'd like to mix it up with?
Well, speaking of old Kerry, I think me and my dad versus Kerry and Ricky Morton would be a match that I've actually had people tell me they want to see. And if that mean, the way I see it, if people want to see it, then we should do it before, people don't want to wrestle anymore. I
Mhm.
don't know how much longer Ricky Morton plans to wrestle. I don't know how much longer my dad plans to wrestle. He came out and helped me out and had tag matches with me, and now we're champions. But that doesn't mean he might want to wrestle for 10 more years. And you also just don't understand, you never know like when things could change for me or Carrie to where we might not get to wrestle each other. Like if Carrie or myself get a contract somewhere, well then we're not going to be able to set up our tag match if we're in different places, for example. So
Mhm.
I think the best thing to do would be to put a match like that on as soon as possible so we can do it because I think that match specifically would be really cool. I'd also like to wrestle the Kazanas. My family and the Kazana family, AJ and KC, we've had a history our whole lives. They're also generational wrestlers, and I feel like, for example, like my dad to wrestle KC and their dad Joe, that would be awesome. Because yeah, I mean Joe's getting older, but he still has matches. He wrestled a few months ago, so that means it could still happen. And the way I see it, if things like that can happen, we need to put it on paper and do it because I think that's kind of like a once in a lifetime thing, and that's what makes those so special, you know.
Absolutely. Do you have any? I know we just kind of talked about two dream matches, but if you were looking at the land like the grand scheme of things,
Mm.
the wide world of wrestling, do you have anybody that's on a list maybe that you want to
Yeah.
mark off?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. It's funny that the two people on my list right now are both injured. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know when it'll happen. I really want to wrestle Colby Carino. I've been telling people that for a while. Colby's a great wrestler, but right now he's having neck issues.
Hmm.
So obviously I'm not it's one of those things we're gonna have to sit and see, when Colby will be back. And unfortunately neck issues are pretty scary. I couldn't tell you how long it'll be, but that's something that if he can recover and come back and be his full healthy self again, I'd love to wrestle Colby. KC Navarro is an amazing wrestler. I got to meet him at TNA, and the first thing I thought of when I saw him wrestle is, man, he's unbelievable in the ring, and it kind of reminded me a lot of the way I wrestle in a sense. Um, I'm not quite on that level yet, but I was like, that's awesome, and I would love for us to see how it would look if we could square things off in the ring. But as a matter of fact, I think he's undergoing an injury right now with his ankle
Hmm.
or something. So
I
both
think
the
it's his
people,
ACL. I
is it his
think.
ACL?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah, well, yeah, yeah. See, that sucks because those are both very serious injuries, and obviously, I'm sure Casey Navarro will be healed up at some point. Colby's is way more scary. I hate anytime you have a neck issue. It's pretty rough, and I hope
It's
he'll be all
dicey
right.
territory.
It's yeah, very, very dodgy right there. It's all right here. That controls how your stature is, and obviously you could be paralyzed. I know older wrestlers that they can't take a bump anymore because they're risking being paralyzed by landing somewhere on their neck, and I'm just like, dang, that's so scary. But hopefully Colby makes a full recovery, and we could go out there and tear it up.
Definitely. One more question, then I'll let
Yeah.
you go. We are over halfway done with 2025. I think we got 4 months left.
Mhm.
What do your goals look like? Where do you want to be by the end of 2025, leading into 2026?
Well, I'm gonna be perfectly candid. I think my goal by the end of the year is to go back to TNA and do what I did there last month, because that was not only a really educational experience for me, but also I know that that could lead to big opportunities with the company. I know that that's kind of the route that you need to take if you intend to wrestle there, and I
Hmm.
definitely do. So my goal by the end of the year is to, keep doing what I do on the indies, tear it up, and try to make a good impact on the independent scene. But I'm also gonna keep going back to the TNA tapings and just see what can come out of that. Whether that's continuing to do work like I did last month, that would be awesome. Just because I like that locker room, I like that atmosphere, and I think that would definitely be my goal for the rest of this year and going into next year, just to keep going back there and seeing what I could do. The more I'm around a company like that, the more I would like to make it feel like home. And that's kind of what you've got to do, and that's what I plan to do, because maybe next time I'm on the show I could tell you I had a match or something there, which would be awesome, and definitely something to talk to you about too, because you better believe when that happens I'm going to jump right back here on you and tell you about it. So
That leads into my next, not question, but statement. If you ever want to come on for part two, I open invitation. I leave the door wide open. This was a great time, and I can see big things for Evan Golden, and I can't wait to talk about it on here on part two.
thanks, man. No, I'll be back for sure. This has been a great time, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We did it at the beginning. You want to do it one more time now at the
Yeah,
end? Shout out them social medias and upcoming events.
I would love to. Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Just look up Evan Golden. I'm on those the most, but you can also find me on TikTok. Uh, like I mentioned earlier, I am on X if you guys want to follow me on there too. I'm not on there as much. I would definitely check out the Instagram and Facebook. And I'm also on Pro Wrestling Tees. If you guys want an Evan Golden t-shirt, or you can go to Pro Wrestling Tees and look me up, and pick up a shirt today. Matter of fact, I just uploaded 3 or 4 new designs in the past couple of months. So if anybody wants an Evan t-shirt, then they can find it on there, and they're pretty good. So
Evan, thank you. I will leave this at see you next time.
see you next time, buddy. Thank you for having me on.